Let's start.
Okay. Hey guys.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Edward, and today I'm giving a talk on quality, happiness, and developer productivity. Thank you for the leading questions in the last talk. So I've been working in tech for the last 10 years. I currently work as a test architect for a company here in Stockholm, and I've worked in various domains, various size companies, from like finance to crypto, defense, real estate. So, what is this talk on? So I'm going to be talking about a pretty hot topic at the moment that isn't AI, which is developer experience. And developer experience is a kind of hot way of kind of looking at improving the productivity of teams, essentially, by trying to make developers be happier. So there was a case study from Atlassian that came out in 2022, early 2022, where they found that they were missing essentially every major milestone of their project roadmap. For essentially years, they were failing at every step. So early 2022, they tried to reassess what was going on. And they started focusing on two things, systems and culture. They gave every engineering team 10% set aside each week, essentially, to try and tackle developer experience issues that they have within the organization. And they set the entire organization's North Star metric to be developer joy. So everything they did internally had to try and make people's lives a little bit better. Literally a few months later, still in 2022, they found that they'd increased developer satisfaction by 50%, median cycle time, which Vitalik mentioned, by 50%, were deploying 3 times more per sprint, and had a 30% increase in internal customer satisfaction, from 50% to 80%. And the SVP of their product essentially said that by fixing tools, addressing processes, and being clear that we're going to measure has yielded results. So DevX isn't just good at Atlassian. Microsoft did a study earlier this year, and they did a survey of, I think, 3,000 developers. And they found out that developers at organizations with good DevX carve out significant time for deep work. They enjoy a 50% productivity boost from it. They find that people who find the work more engaging feel 30% more productive. People who understand their code feel 42% more productive. Those with more intuitive processes are 50% more innovative. Innovative here means developing new features, not keeping the lights on, not supporting stuff, or firefighting, or whatever you call it. And those who report fast code turnaround times, like quick PR cycles, have 20% more innovation. And finally, those who get quick responses to questions report 50% less technical debt. So again, it seems like DevX is good. So, and I will explain what DevX actually is concretely in a minute. Question, in the latest Stack Overflow developer survey, how many developers are happy at work? So put your hands up if you think it's 20%. B, 35%. C, 50%. And D, who thinks 65% of developers are happy at work? We're mildly optimistic. It was actually 20%. Only 20% of developers in the survey are happy at work. 30% dislike their work entirely, and the rest are meh. And you can look at the survey.
Is it across the world, or?
That was the Stack Overflow survey, so that was global, and it was across different. I'm sure there's a breakdown, but that was global essentially. There was no rule about how long you'd worked or anything like that. So yeah, I guess some people may also be unhappy from other circumstances. But for this, we're going to say it's purely work related, because that makes this better. So let's look at ways of improving this. So I just want to take a slight tangent and talk about the theory of quality. And this came out in a really snappy paper this year called Developer Productivity for Humans Part 7 Software Quality. It's amazing. And essentially they tried to describe what quality is and how they view it at Google. So they kind of have product quality, and obviously that includes things like user experience. And they say that other quality types feed into product quality. So you can't improve product quality without improving system quality. So to improve user experience, you should look at defect rates and reliability and performance and security. And you can't do that without first addressing code quality in the project. So maintainability, complexity, testability, all of the ilities. And you can't address code quality without process quality. So improving the code review process, or removing it, test coverage, test flakiness, and also the stability of your process strategy. So in this talk, again, there's going to be an assumption that even though we're talking about process quality improvements, at the end, you're improving the product quality. So the overall question for this talk, how can we design quality engineering practices that don't just catch bugs, but actively enhance the developer experience? Essentially, how can we do DevX? And I've said that term 50 times now, so I will define it. Well, I won't define it. I'll use this Microsoft paper to define it because I do it badly. So developer experience encompasses how developers feel about, think about, and value their work. And improving DevX increases not only productivity, but satisfaction, engagement, and employee retention. So we're not talking about quality of a project, we're talking about quality of an organization.
Work.
And their jobs. So we'll define DevX even further. So same paper, DevX kind of encompasses three concrete terms: feedback loops, cognitive load, and flow state. The idea is that you tweak feedback loops and cognitive load and improve flow state. So feedback loops is the speed and quality of responses to actions performed. You can think about this like when you run a local test set, how quickly does it return the answers? Your CI pipeline, how quickly does it build? Stuff like that. You can think of cognitive load as the amount of mental processing required to do a task. Say you're a developer, you're building a service, you have to interact with an API. How easy is the documentation? Do you go to a dev portal, download it? Do you have to have a meeting with the team in 2 weeks so they can work out what their API does? I recently worked at an organization that had that issue. And flow state, not again. Flow state. So again, I'm going to use a definition because I'd mess this up, but the mental state in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment. Essentially, it's that kind of flow where you start working at 9 and you look up again and it's lunchtime. It's how much you're enjoying your work.
And you can brag about it as well. I've done amazing stuff today.
Precisely. And it is possible to measure this. I appreciate that that isn't, oh, it's larger up there. So you can measure these three with perceptions and workflows. Perceptions are qualitative ways of analyzing it. Workflows are quantitative. A perception is how someone feels about a thing, and a workflow is like a build tool. And also KPIs, which are our North Star metrics. So for example, with perceptions, for feedback loops, it's the satisfaction with automated test speed. A workflow, like a concrete quantitative thing, will be the time it takes to generate CI results. And then KPIs could be the overall perceived ease of delivering software. Cognitive load is similar. It's a perceived thing, like the perceived complexity of a code base, and a quantifiable one, such as the time it takes to get to answers to technical questions. And flow state. Again, a perception, perceived ability to focus and avoid interruptions, and then a concrete thing. How much time do you have in a day without meetings or interruptions? Now, as quality engineers, I think we can actually affect quite a few. Even in this example from the same paper, I think that quality engineers at least can impact the points that I've put in bold. You could probably argue for others, and you can probably argue that some of the ones I put in bold aren't your responsibility, I guess. But there's still all of the KPIs, all of the North Star metrics that organizations might look at for DevX. I think quality engineers can be responsible for or have an impact in. So what is a quality engineer's role in DevX? So I just kind of put together a couple random ideas pretty quickly for these. So I'm sure if we sat down and brainstormed, we'd be able to make way more. But feedback loops are essentially the same. It's reducing local testing times, cognitive load, it's improving test results and logs. I don't know if you've had a developer come back to you because you wrote an automated test, and like it's just some damn stack trace. And they're like, what does this even mean? Or like flaky tests, they're like, is this test really failing? And you don't even know. And then that happens today.
Too often.
Yeah. And then flow state, improving the bug reporting process. Like, did you go to your developer with a bug but Steve can't log in? Or did you go with a JSON that he can send to his API that will cause the error again? Basically, are you giving them help to be able to do stuff easily, or are you kind of breaking their so-called flow? So there was actually a different paper to the last one, I think, with 5 steps essentially on how you can try to implement DevX in your day-to-day work. So you want to get data on the current developer experience, set goals based on it, set your team up for success, essentially do it, share progress, check that what you've done works, and repeat the process. So we'll kind of break those down a bit more to be concrete. So getting data on the current developer experience. Traditionally, you can do this in 3 ways. You can do surveys sent out to development teams. You can collect data from concrete build systems like CI pipelines, local builds, test runs. And you can interview people, like interviewing new starters about their onboarding experience, EMs about known team issues. You know, if you work at Megacorp and you've just brought in a new startup, you just brought in a new employee who works at a startup, and you go, hey, how's the onboarding been? And they're like, it took me half an hour at my last place to set up my dev environment and we're on day 7 or something. But maybe there's some developer experience issues there.
I haven't even received my laptop yet.
Yeah, or 5 days to get a request from Docker.
Yeah.
But when you do try and get this data, remember to be both qualitative and quantitative. It's nice to kind of focus on quantitative because it's kind of numbers and we work in tech, but you'll also miss the entire picture that gives it some sort of subtle context. And finally, DevX surveys do exist, so you can find these online if you want to try and send one out to your team tomorrow. Then you want to set goals based on your DevX data. So you want to evaluate the data you collected and kind of also get some business priorities. So speak to your line manager, speak to the CTO, say, what's our focus this quarter? What's our focus this year? Mostly it will be things like, we should release features quicker. So then you want to find overlaps, essentially, between the data that you collected and the target the organization has. So business priorities are to release features quicker, you do a survey, you find out that people have real issues with local runtimes, complicated setups, flaky tests. You set a specific goal, like an experiment. You go, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to improve local test runtimes by 25%. That is our team's goal for the next 3 weeks or whatever. And you set metrics. We think that if we do this, we're going to improve the NPS score. NPS is Net Promoter Score, essentially how likely is a developer to recommend your tool to like a friend or colleague. It also works with internal surveys. And then issue cycle time. We expect the issue cycle time to decrease because people are getting quicker feedback when they're running their tests locally. They're able to do more changes, they're able to test it, or they're more likely to test it locally, etc. So we've set some goals. Now we want to set up our team for success. So we want to make our goals transparent to the organization. You could set team OKR. Basically, you could create an epic in Jira and have some stories assigned to it.
Is it a purpose?
Pardon?
Is it a purpose?
Is it a?
The purpose.
Oh, the purpose. So
I think this is the purpose.
yeah. So, and then you want to get buy-in. So if you're trying to do this, chances are you're going to be interacting with other teams. You're going to want to sneak some work into their sprints. If a team is told your most important thing is delivering features, the last thing they want to do is have a quality engineer turn up and say, okay, we're fixing build times. They won't do it. You have to excite people and maybe send them some papers. And if that doesn't work, sneak it in. And you can also add other engineering teams into the same OKR or into the same epic, essentially. You can share accountability with teams involved. Try and set short goals. So if you don't set short goals, revisit it. So if you're trying to decrease test runtime locally by 25%, and you're saying it's going to take 4 weeks, in 2 weeks, check that you've decreased it even slightly, or that someone knows how to decrease it, so that you can at least cancel the investment early if you find that it's going badly. And don't worry about failing, because it is an experiment. It's okay to kind of just say, hey, we think this is going to happen, we think this is going to work, and it doesn't, because at the end of the day, you'll still have increased or decreased build time. So developers will still be happy. You might just not have the affecting the organization.
And you build trust because they see you want to improve their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I have seen organizations that don't want to do developer surveys because they did a survey, but they did nothing with the data. And they don't want to do a second one without first addressing it. And
The illusion of being cared for.
yeah, exactly.
See no evil, hear no evil.
Precisely. So after that, share progress and validate investments. So share the results. Share the fact that, hey, we've decreased build time. You should use this new version of a tool. It's way quicker. Reflect on whether the projects you did actually resulted in the business impact that you wanted. So for example, did the NPS score increase or did cycle time reduce? And also assess this workflow because it might not be one for you, and kind of this is your chance to basically do a retrospective. And after you finish that cycle, you can repeat the process. Go back to step 1, collect more data. Don't change the data schema too much, because if you are trying to do this and do surveys over a long time, you want to be able to see historical trends. If you destroy that at some point, you'll lose that, and then when you recollect it, you can't kind of connect the two. So if you have like Net Promoter Score of 8 solidly, and then you decide to stop, and then you bring it back in because people are complaining at work that their job sucks, and suddenly it's 4, you're unable to work out which initiative kind of broke things. It could have been the one where you brought everyone back into the office. Cool. So common pitfalls. So if you do try this, and you're like, okay, I want to try and improve developer experience. I've ran a survey. Everyone has issues with code quality. Chances are you'll Google how to fix code quality online, and there will be a bunch of tools, and you'll come into the office tomorrow with Sonar Cube and a bunch of others. It will cost 500 grand a year to implement. You bring it in, and then no one cares about it because you didn't onboard people properly. It's just waste. You're now maintaining the tool because you've got the investment for it. Just make sure that if you bring in a tool, it's with purpose and you actually want everyone to be involved. Ignoring developer feedback on your work. So it's important that we treat, or I think it's important that we treat test development or quality engineering as a form of product where the users are the developers. If you're building UI tests or you're building API tests or you're building test tooling, you should make sure that the developers are using it, they like it, the outcome or the logs or the errors are clear to them. There's a product fallacy, build it, they'll come. And then not measuring impact correctly. So if you do try to do this, you should try to keep your evaluation metric separate to your goal metric. And what do I mean by that? If you want to improve build times, don't improve build times for the sake of improving build times. If you want to evaluate, it has something else. We want to improve local build times to increase the issue cycle time. You don't want to separate, you don't want to combine them basically, because then it's self-fulfilling and every project will be good. Finally, if you do go home and decide to Google developer experience, how to implement, you will come across Dora, which I think Vitaly mentioned already. Dora was created by the DevOps Research and Assessment Group in 2014 as a way of organizations kind of measuring the productivity of the organization. They have technically 5, but they have 4 main measurements for these: deployment frequency, lead time for changes, change failure rate, and time to restore service. When I started implementing these sort of tools, I wasn't sure what Dora was or thought it was very complicated, but a trivialized way of looking at it is essentially deployment frequency when people mention that. It's like an API pushing when pipelines are deployed to prod. You can just have like an API push to like your own internal service saying, hey, we've deployed with this hash. Lead time for changes is literally just the time from first commit to deployment. CFR, change failure rate, it's just when you do deploy, how many do you roll back, or how many do you send a hotfix off?
Defective.
Yep. And then time to restore service, sometimes it's called MTTR, and that's kind of the time between the deployment and fix, so how long does it take to actually fix the service? A lot of people read Accelerate in 2017, and they're starting to try to bring Dora into a lot of organizations, so this does pop up more often than not nowadays.
And chances are managers will hear about it at least.
Someone will say, hey, what's Dora?
Yeah.
And then that will start. But I've been very kind of heavy on metrics in this talk, and I just want to remind people of perverse incentives. So what is measured changes. Uber introduced this engineering metrics dashboard last year, and it basically calculated individual people's commits, diffs, PRs. The issue is people knew they were being measured by commits, diffs, and PRs. So they split their code into more PRs and commits, which sounds harmless, but there was no increased number of lines of code, so there was no work done, and the CI pipeline still had to now do more work. So it actually did have an impact on the business. They ended up having to essentially spend more on runs, so it kind of blew up in their face. There's also a famous example of Hacktoberfest in 2020 during COVID, where they said, hey, you guys should definitely go out and start making PRs in open source projects. We'll give you a free t-shirt. So 75,000 people went out and did low impact PRs in open source projects. And the volunteers that managed them had to kind of deal with that for months.
Fixing README.
Yeah, it's like added dot to sentence in comments. And that took a lot of time. So sometimes you can mean well, but just do bad things. There's other famous ones, like when the UK was in Afghanistan, we wanted to reduce heroin production. So we said, hey, to the farmers, we'll give you cash for poppies. What are you going to do if you're going to get cash for a product? You grow it. Yeah. We realized, oh crap, we've increased heroin production. We're going to stop paying. So then they just sold the poppies. It's
not really, I mean, the British Empire did the same thing in India.
In India with cobras.
With snakes.
So that was the classic. I think it was in Mumbai. The UK seemed, if you Google perverse incentives, the UK are behind most of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we've
and
done.
You repeated that in Afghanistan.
Yeah. So that one was essentially in Mumbai. There were a lot of cobras. So we said, hey, bring us a cobra head and we'll give you, I don't know, a shilling. I'm not sure what money they use. It's probably not a shilling. But people were like, oh, fantastic. So they bred cobras.
Yeah.
They did the same thing and said, okay, this is a really dumb idea. We're no longer paying. People went, well, I don't want a cobra farm.
So they
So then the
released-
city was swamped with cobras.
Yeah.
There are many perverse incentives on Wikipedia. It's worth reading.
Maybe you should have specified like handcrafted cobra,
Yeah.
wooden cobra, like something
Exactly.
like that. So it's not harmful.
Yeah.
And you actually need to make something.
Yeah. So
And
to
it can't be just a stick. It needs to look like cobra.
yeah. So to wrap up, because I realise we're running late.
No,
Um,
all good.
okay, so consider yourself a product engineer for testing. I think it's a really good mindset to have. But we're building products that happen to be testing tools for developers. I think if you bring developers in, get their feedback, and build the right thing for them, it's just a much nicer relationship between the two. So get feedback on your tools, make sure that they understand what tests exist, how they're ran, etc. Think about how you're going to measure your changes. So try and take a data-driven approach to DevX. Even if you just send out a survey and say, hey, what do you think about the current testing situation of the organization? Then you do some improvements, you do the same survey, and you see if people actually found your work to be useful. And finally, quality engineers can influence the company beyond testing product quality. So you can be involved in things like improving velocity, reducing retention at an organization. A lot of people wonder what quality engineering can kind of grow into, and I think that developer experience is one possibility of moving kind of beyond just product quality, but having an impact within the organization.
Natural step to management, essentially.
Yes, or an architect.
Or an architect, true.
Cool, so that's essentially my entire talk. My email is up there, as is my LinkedIn if you scan the QR code. But I will also share the slides and all my sources because that was pretty source heavy on the meetup as a comment, so you guys can get all the references and stuff there.